Yes. 1X is going down this weekend. Guys, this is the one I've been looking forward to. So I used to have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning on a feed that Front Row Brian would send me so that I could watch Ben Askren fight. The production was through the roof. The funky music had hit. He'd come walking out in some yellow t-shirt, go take somebody down and beat the hell out of him. 2 different weight classes. I just had great memories of this. So 1X, so you guys understand what this is. This is the big anniversary event, and it is going to take place all day. Now, I think literally it's like 10 or 12 hours, but this thing is the buffet of MMA. It will all be out there. You take as much as you want. It's one of those situations. You want to watch all 10 hours, good for you. You're going to have a great weekend. You want to cherry pick it, go right ahead. I got to tell you a little bit about them because I don't want you to miss this. So anything that you could do under one roof is going to be done. They're going to put on competitive grappling with the biggest names in the world. They're going to bring in Muay Thai with the world champions. When I tell you the greatest, they're going to put on MMA. They've even got a mixed rules bout. Any formula that you want to do, pick and choose, and you're going to enjoy this. But it's something important for me for a number of reasons. Do you guys remember Akiyama? They call him Sexy Yama. I've got an ego, and I'm not comfortable saying that. But he's like the best looking man to ever do MMA. I was supposed to fight him at one point. So I always follow his career. And I cannot remember, I think I even had a signed bout agreement. I think we were that far along. Vitor ended up doing the fight. And I remember being there live, and he walked out. It was like, it was some kind of interesting music, but we were told that he was the one that actually sang it. And he was like some kind of a pop star for this type of genre. And he walked out in this fantastic robe, and he looks the whole bit. But I remember this guy. I'd been with this guy for a while because our paths were about to cross. And then he was an Olympic champion on top of that. And I would go into Quest every day, and I'm working out with Judo John. And Judo John's telling me, he calls himself Judo John. He's like, this is the guy I look up to. This guy is the best. He's an Olympic champion. He's a pain in the ass, quite frankly. Vitor had a hard time with him until he was able to get that boxing go, but it was just a range issue. Then you've got Andre Galvao. Well, anywhere Andre goes, I go. Right? It's one of those things. Andre and I were competitors. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this, but when you have a competition with somebody, you are now attached to their career, even if it's ever so slight. But I go with him everywhere he goes. Anywhere Andre goes, I'm part of that story. So Andre Galvao, who's the Abu Dhabi absolute champion, which is one of the great grappling matches of all time. And that was not one on skill. That was one on heart. This was like a marathon match. These guys were out there for like 26 minutes, and the judges couldn't even figure this out. It was between those two boys. But ultimately, Andre gets his hand raised. So Andre's now going to go back to this year's Abu Dhabi, which is going to be at a sold-out UNLV, and he's going to have the big match with Gordon Ryan. Great. Before you get to that point, the question is, Andre, what in the hell have you been doing? And we don't always know that answer. Abu Dhabi comes around every 2 years, and we have seen vast differences in the competitors. Just by example, but Mark Kerr was king of the world in 2001. By 2003, didn't even look like the same guy. 2 years is a lot of time. It's all a question of what are you doing in those 2 years. So the fact that Andre is now signed with ONE FC is very relevant to Andre's future versus Gordon Ryan. Andre is talking about he wants to get into MMA. Andre has done MMA. He even fought Tyron Woodley at one point down at 170 pounds. Said, I've had enough of MMA, moves over to grappling, but now he's going to ONE FC. And the big question is he dipping his toe in the ONE FC grappling pool so that he can project himself into the MMA? That's what a lot of people are looking at this fight for, but I'm not. I'm just fine with Andre doing what Andre does best, which is grappling. I just need to know that he's in shape and taking it serious and hasn't been sitting on his ass for 2 years just to go collect a paycheck against Gordon Ryan later in the summer. So the mere fact that Andre is going to go put it on the line in ONE FC in a pure grappling match, it's a huge precursor to what's going to happen down the way, and we are going to judge him purely. 2 years is a period of time. It's worked out very nicely for some people, and I'm not looking to put down Mark Kerr, but in all fairness, between 2001 and 2003, we could see that Mark Kerr quit training. And he only showed up to Abu Dhabi against Mario Sperry because of the paycheck. That's all right. The question is that what Andre's doing? Now, you want to talk about nice guys. I think if you were to have a poll amongst the boys, a poll in the locker room, who's the most popular kid in class? I do not imagine that anybody's going to beat Renzo Gracie. Everybody loves Renzo. That's you guys, that's the fellow competitors, whether you're fighting him or you got beat up by, everybody likes Renzo. He's just that guy. But you want to know who could go toe-to-toe for just a nice, kind person that happens to be in the tough guy business? John Wayne Parr. Possibly the most pleasant person I've ever interacted with, definitely number one in the world of social media. John Wayne Parr, who's been at this forever, is a fan. He's just a little kid inside. He wanted to make it to the big time. He wants to show off in front of the cameras. He wants to go and test his skills that he worked hard on, but he's just a fan inside. It's hard for him. I've been backstage with Parr where people are pointing, go, oh my gosh, that's John Wayne Parr. But then Parr will meet you and he'll want your autograph. He'll want your photo. He's just like this really sweet guy. And the mere fact that he can keep going, it's a major Randy Couture or Brett Favre, or who's this quarterback that's doing it, that just made us come back. He's married to the real Brady. It's just like that. Like these guys that can find a way to extend their career, there's something there that we can all run with, that we can all be part of. Now, I want to talk to you guys about Demetrious Johnson. Demetrious Johnson beat up 12 men in a row at probably the hardest weight class in the sport, which is 125 pounds. Opposite to perception is reality when it comes to MMA. Perception is bigger is better. We all know that. We can all still remember the early UFC where they had tournaments called David versus Goliath. And you'd put a 400-pound man in there with a 190-pound man. And we all knew the 400-pound man was going to squash. He's just going to go sit on. Remember people say stupid stuff like that? Well, I could beat you. I could just sit on you. It's just one of these weird things. But if you know nothing about fighting and you've never seen it before, you actually believe that's true. You actually believe I better be nicer to this big guy. But remember when that was a real thing? I tie this in because I don't want you guys to miss the concept of how hard this weight class that Demetrious was at. You go back and you look at those video game finishes he had. You take about the time that he picks up Ray Borg, returns him to the mat, oh, by the way, is spinning into an arm bar while completely exhausted and already put in 20 minutes of work. Absolutely remarkable. He goes over to ONE FC. He doesn't get the same results. Why? Why? We couldn't be sure, but we could take guesses. One of the guesses is because the pool over at ONE FC is so goddamn hard. That's one of the guesses, sure. I will maintain for you, just as a guy that had experiences in different organizations, your first time out is your first time out. It does not matter if you've had 20 fights. If you go over to a different organization, you're starting over. It's just different. It's a different feel. It's a different energy. The music on the speakers is different. The people that you see beforehand is different. Even though you're doing the same sport, that's an excuse by me, by the way. That's not a reality. You've got to be bigger than that. You've got to be better than that. I don't want to admit the jitters in the way that you feel. I don't want to admit that. I want to be looked at as a professional that can go do anything. But I will tell you what, I fought in boxing rings and I fought in cages. I've gone in wrestling mats that have no barrier for exit. And you'll go off into the bleachers if you drive the guy hard enough. It will change your strategy. It will change the way you move around. Fighters at every event, one thing that you guys don't see before they go on camera, every single athlete will go to the apparatus. If that's the ring, if that's the mat, if that's the cage, they will go to it when they get there and they will walk that thing. They will smell it. They will stomp around for where the framing's at. They will rub their feet on it to test the canvas. Some canvases go on a tarp, some go on a very rough surface, but you need to know this ahead of time. So when I come at you, excuse making, sure I am, but telling you there's a difference when you go other places, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was multiple factors. I can tell you one thing, it was not, as it pertained to Demetrious Johnson and his results, it was not his preparation. Demetrious has the same great coach in Matt Hume. He's at the same wonderful gym as AMC. He has never left. He's right up the road 4 hours from me in Seattle. Now, I got to sit in on Demetrious one day. I got to sit in on his training as he's getting ready to take on Rodtang, and it was just by Zoom. I was talking to Coach Matt Hume. He turned around and got to watch some of Demetrious. But if you guys don't know what's going on here, this is a mixed rules fight. What does that mean? What that means is Rodtang, who is the reigning Muay Thai champion of the world, is going to come over and take on Demetrious, but they're going to alternate rounds. In the first round, it's straight Muay Thai. In the second round, it's MMA. In the third round, it's back to Muay Thai. Fourth round, I'm sure you guys can guess. This changes everything. You change one ingredient, you just changed what we're doing here. If I go put you guys on the basketball court, and I got LeBron James over here, and I got Michael Jordan over here, and you're placing all your bets, and then I go, oh, by the way, they're playing with a football. You're going, wait a minute. You just changed everything. Yes, I agree. I admit to that. They're changing everything. So now you come into a survival question. Can Demetrious Johnson, first off, compete with Rodtang in stand-up fighting? That's your very first question. But once you get around that, the question becomes, can he survive? What if he doesn't want to compete with him? What if Demetrious isn't as fast? What if he doesn't have the setups? What if he doesn't have the combination? What if that's what he believes going into it? Great, he still can win. He just got to go into survival mode. Can he survive? Is there anywhere to hide? Is there anywhere to move? This has been tested before, but very rarely. There was a grappling match. You see, you guys, you must appreciate this because you must appreciate the history of the sport and why it started. This sport started in 1993 with one goal, which is to find out which art was the most dominant. What we found out by the turn of the century is those arts to and of themselves are gone. The Bruce Lee philosophy of steal something from everybody and when the time is right, use whatever in the hell works, won the day. But somewhere along the way, there was an organization called Metamorphosis. And when I tell you this was tested, Brendan Schaub, who's a very good friend in full disclosure and a training partner of mine, had what's called a purple belt. He took on Cyborg. This was the mismatch of a century, but Brendan had balls, walked out there, and Brendan left with a purple belt and a draw. How did he do that? He survived. He had a strategy. It wasn't a great look for jiu-jitsu. And I remember people in the arena live. I happened to be there. I remember people booing Brendan, and it insulted me so much. Brendan followed the rules on the apparatus against the opponent at the agreed upon time. That's it. He did not have to go for arm bars and heel hook. He didn't have to do anything else. He did everything that he set out to do. It was a knock on jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu, when tested against the strategy of Brendan Schaub, did not have an answer. And I push back as a wrestler. I'll take on anybody in wrestling. And you can do anything you want to stop this. I will run your ass down and I will put a bunch of points on the board, period. And anyone that wants to question, I'll do it. I'll prove it. Step forward. Is that true for other arts? It's a big question, guys. It goes back to 1993 trying to solve questions like this. If Demetrious can't go fisticuffs toe-to-toe with Rodtang, can he survive? Can he stay away? Can he get the referee between them? Can he circle enough? Can he use footwork? Here's the problem. I watched him train. I happen to know Demetrious' strategy. I shared with Demetrious and Matt Hume, do not show me anything if this is a secret. I got a big mouth and I do a lot of talking. They said we know. Now, I'm only bringing that to you because Demetrious is going to go in and test this. Like every other badass out there, he's not going to flinch. He is not even thinking the word survive, and if you say it, you're going to be insulting him. He's going after Rodtang. That's the answer. Is that going to work or is that not? Inside of the first 5 minutes, that between those boys. But it is going to be a mess. And you guys, if you follow me on social media, know I called Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo's a coach now, but of course, he spent as many minutes inside of the octagon as anybody with Demetrious that isn't named Big John McCarthy. And I just said, can he do it? Is Demetrious fast enough? Does he understand slipping? He's going to have the littler gloves on. He's going to have a big striker who's predominantly I think Rodtang is more dangerous with kicks and knees. That's a personal opinion. I don't know that you have to worry about the hands as much. I think Ray Borg's a fantastic boxer. I think, and I know this is blasphemy, I think Ray Borg's as good of a boxer as Rodtang. I would not say that when it comes to overall Muay Thai, where you get to use every limb. You get to use your shins, you get both knees, you get the use of your elbow, and of course you get to use the hands. It's a mess. It's a mess. But I just called Henry, and I just asked, and I didn't say, can he beat him? I said, can he go with him? Can Demetrious go with him, even if he loses? Even if he loses on a 10-9 must system, can he go with him, and can he still be standing, win the second round, and MMA now comes into it? Henry said, you bet he can. He said, you bet he can. And Henry broke it down just a little bit further. His coach's hat came on. He talked about some of the strategies, but he praised the speed of Demetrious Johnson. And if you go to look those 12 victories in a row by DJ, versus the opposite outcome he got in one. It wasn't because of the preparation once again. It had to do with the strategy. Demetrious doesn't know survival mode. There's times where it'd be better if he did, but he doesn't. And there's never been a champion to stand before you thinking about ways they can go into combat and cower, that they can hide. It's just not a champion's mindset. There's a fine line between genius and insanity, but you can't get to that point if you got that scared guy in you and you're going into training camp every day, and now you're surrounded by coaches and teammates that are saying, golly gee, you just got to get through the first 5 minutes. You just can't do that. It can't be that way. Then you have the risk factor. You have the factor of what happens if Demetrious was to go out and was to employ this on Rodtang. That's where you start to get hungry. That's where you start getting these guys that start pulling upsets. Muay Thai has come over to MMA, and it hasn't had the warmest of receptions. But it's not because Muay Thai doesn't work. As a matter of fact, we've never had an MMA champion that does not put a vast emphasis in the training room on Muay Thai. We know the knees, the shins, the elbows, and the hands. This is your entire body that's allowed because we barred the headbutt. The problem comes in when the Muay Thai guy is worried of a takedown. And it's not just being taken down. It is the threat of the takedown. It was the worry of the what if I step in, if I engage. Every time I come to kick him, I'm now standing on one foot. Every time I extend to attack him, my hips are open, and what I'm going to use for defense is now on the offense. It's one of these things. It's a very weird game. It's a very weird battle. You get the Maurice Smiths of the world, you get the Marco Huas, the Don Fries, and now the Izzy Adesanyas that have both, that don't care. Go ahead and take me down. I'm coming at you with everything. That's a totally different recipe. And now when you have Rodtang, who not only is going to have that, he's going to have 5 minutes in his world. It's very fascinating, guys. I could go round and around on what this is. And when I tell you guys this is an all-day event, I wasn't joking when I said I think it's scheduled for 10 hours. It might be 12. All right, nobody knows if there's going to be finishes, if there's going to be knockouts. This is going to be a whole-day event. And the Guinness Book of World Records actually covers this topic. I don't know if ONE FC and Chatri are aware of that or if they're going for that. But this isn't a brand new phenomenon. I can remember when Dana White, who was doing 6 events a year and matured to 12, told the world that he was going to do 1 a week. And he did it on 3 different networks that I saw, and all 3 networks pushed back and told him that's too much MMA. And Dana had to handle it on the first one. He had to dance around it on the second one. And the third one, he shoved it right down their throat and said, do you think there's too much football? And they said no. And no one ever asked Dana that question again. Now, as you look to WrestleMania that's coming up, quick shout out to Lesnar and Stone Cold Steve Austin, just by example, they're doing a 2-day event. Vince McMahon is going to a 2-day back-to-back event. I dealt with a small-time wrestler promoter here in Oregon, and he had many different goals that he had. Many different venues that he wanted to play. He wanted to do a Coal Miners Club match. He wanted a triple-way tag team. Many different goals that he had, but one of the goals that he had, he's the one that brought this to my attention that the Guinness Book of World Records covers this, was he wanted to do a 4-day wrestling event with no break. 4 days straight, no intermission. Is that 96 hours straight? And that would get him in the Guinness Book of World Records. And he attempted to do it, and everybody got tired, and they went home. It was like the guy making the popcorn got too tired. The people doing security. It didn't work. He had the venue. He had the athletes. He was going for it. The Guinness Book carries this. And I'm telling you, Chatri and ONE FC, if they can pull this off, they are going to set some kind of a record that is going to be recognized somewhere. For you guys, the fight fans, go enjoy. Take what you want. Eat till you're full. Be back next week. I'm going to tell you all about it.